Hey, everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of Hamilton Icons. This week, I am joined by an amazing person, actually a close personal friend and somebody that I've done quite a bit of business with in the past, but it's Matthew Farronato from the Investors Group. He's got a pretty interesting story. I'm excited to talk to him. Matt, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Justin.
Yeah, it's when I started doing this, I started coming up with a list of people that I thought I might want to have on. And of course, you're always like at the top of people I need to ask. Because, it's hard to find people that wanna get on camera and talk, right? Like,
Yeah.
sometimes it can be a little.
It's not everyone's comfort zone, that's for sure. I
Yeah.
think, the industry and the job, I think, has put me in a position where you do talk a lot.
Yeah.
So, I think over the years, I've definitely become a lot more comfortable with it. If you asked me in high school, I would have hid behind the wall. Like,
Yeah.
public speaking was not a comfort zone for me for sure, but, like anything, you do it enough, you get in front of, the bigger audiences and different situations where you learn to be comfortable with it and you grow, right?
Yeah, you do, right? I remember my first video, watching it back, I don't think I took a breath during the entire thing. I just, like, talked like, a million miles a minute just to get everything out, and I was like, "Oh," I could look so tense. Now it's I don't know, it doesn't bother me as much,
Yeah,
but
I think I did my first presentation in the industry. I think I did it in like half the time I was allotted. So
yeah.
I can relate. I understand that completely. You just try to get it out. You're like, oh, what now?
Yeah, you think you have all this time until you start
Yeah.
talking and you're like, "Oh, crap, I guess I didn't have that much time," or it flies by,
Yeah.
which is good. Yeah. So Investors Group, do you wanna talk just a little bit, brief overview of what it is you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my capacity today, I work as a comprehensive certified financial planner. So a lot of words, but what that really means is that we try to be a one-stop shop for all of your financial needs, whether that's investing, lending, risk management, estate planning, or we can get even more complex and into the weeds with advanced tax financial planning. And we've been doing that for about 10 years now with IG Wealth Management, or formerly Investors Group. And I work as a solo practice, meaning that I am on my own. I have a team of specialists within the office that I kind of lean on for some heavy lifting, but mostly I just run my own business.
Yeah, that's good, and I mean, that's the interesting thing. I think people always don't understand how those industries work. Like, are you an employee? Do you get given this kind of business? Do you have to, but you very much are an entrepreneur in a sense that you have to go out and find the business and build your book, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're definitely getting better at um, helping, let's say, the consumer or the general public understand what options they have in our industry. Um, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors and titles, and I think we're doing a good job trying to bring more financial literacy and awareness to where you can turn and what type of advice you'll get. Um, but yeah, absolutely. I started a practice just over 10 years ago, meaning that I started with zero clients. I previously worked for a retail bank and loved the experience, learned a lot, but found that there were certain nuances that didn't kind of fit with the type of um, advice that I wanted to provide. So I kind of took a leap of faith, like anyone that joins the entrepreneurial world, and set out on my own with great intentions, and through trials and tribulations, kind of muscled my way into the industry and built a book of business. Now that I'm happy to say 10 years later, I'm um, comfortably in the industry.
Yeah, 10 years, it's funny. I can't believe it's been I guess we've probably been in the industries about the same amount of time, like,
So,
with me in real estate, and, it's funny you say with good intentions, right? Because that's you're always you gotta have good intentions when you're doing
yeah.
it to get things rolling.
Absolutely. I mean, you're ambitious. We were both pretty young at the time we
Yeah.
both started, and
I think we both had hair.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, that's fleeting. And I think you just have great intentions, but I don't know if you really appreciate the amount of work and persistence, I'll say, that it takes to build that business. but it's great to see we're both still here 10 years later.
Absolutely, and it's like you said too, when we start when we're younger, a lot of the people that we know are in no position to even use our services, right? Like financial planning, when you're in your early 20s, a lot of people are thinking like, I just want to make sure I have enough money to go out on the weekend, right? Or buy a case of beer. They're not thinking of that what am I doing with my retirement?
That was hurdle number 1. I think, I knew a lot of people, or I'll say peers, that I could get in front of at the beginning and kind of tell my story. But what I didn't really anticipate is that we were all in the same struggle. We were all just starting out, trying to figure out what our career path would be, um, learning what our relationship with money would be, coming out of university, school, whatever um, facet you were in your early 20s. Um, so I wouldn't necessarily say they were ideal clients at the time, and I'm appreciative for everyone that kind of bought in and is to this day still on board. But I think the first real hurdle was figuring out that that ideal client was someone that was a little bit more mature, a little bit more established, and um, had a few more dollars saved up, and had a little bit more, let's say, of a complex financial situation where that value add and the advice I could provide really kind of fit.
Hmm.
And I think that just naturally evolves over time. And as any business owner understands, I mean, your business is going to cater to a certain client, and you kind of either embrace that, or you go in a niche market and try to find where you can provide the best value.
Hmm. And what made you pick this industry?
Yeah, you know what? I didn't really have intentions of being in this industry. Um, as you know, I'm a huge golfer, and I had great ambitions of working in some capacity within the golf industry. At the time, I was working in sales for Titleist, or for Acushnet, and my contract had ended. I came home from Vancouver. My sister was getting married, so a lot of life stuff happening, and my dad, being a banker for 30 plus years, just said, "Why don't you just go work for the bank and get on your feet, start having an income, and then figure it out?" So he got me an interview. It worked out. I started working at a bank, and after about a year of doing that, I noticed really quickly that um, let's just say my financial literacy was a lot stronger than most of my peers. They were getting into situations where they were trying to buy houses, they needed to buy cars, they had an income or a career, um, and I think the information I grew up with a father that worked in the industry, I kind of took for granted, and not. I didn't really know that there was such a huge gap in understanding how simple things work, credit cards, how to manage money, budgeting. Uh, and quickly, once I got into that banking world, I kind of became that person that people were turning to ask these questions. And so with that, I kind of said, hey, like, I kind of have a good understanding of this. I definitely have more I can learn. And I kind of started to piece together an idea that maybe this is more of a career path than I thought it was from the onset. And that's what kind of started the ball rolling. And then after gaining a little bit more experience in the industry, I really kind of grasped the idea that, okay, one, there's a huge disconnect. People need information, they don't know where to turn. And two, I, I personally think that the banks were doing a poor job of catering to their clients. And what I mean by that really is that they had products, and me as an employee of the bank, my performance was ranked on how well I could get those products in the client's hands. I worked in a city, or an area where most of my clients were elderly and affluent. And you learn very quickly that someone that has money and is in retirement doesn't need overdraft protection. They don't want new credit cards. They don't need lines of credit. Um, my targets were all based around selling products like that made the bank money. And that kind of led me down a path to say, okay, well, how can I do this in a capacity where I don't have someone telling me what products need to be sold to my clients? I can figure out who they are, what their need is, what is of value to them, and then we can go out in the broad world and say, okay, what pieces fit in best for them? And that led me to kind of branch outside of the retail banking world and landed with IG Wealth Management at the time, which was renowned for their training program. I think that's really where they shined to me at that state and time. And really, the opportunity there, my mindset was just learn as much as I can, be in front of people that have been in the industry for their full career, and just be a sponge, soak
Mhm.
up information, learn, and hopefully grow. I guess, like you said, good intentions.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting way that you present it because I don't think I've heard it, but I understand the concept where the banks are obviously trying to peddle their products, right? And as an employee of the bank, you probably have I don't want to say agenda because that sounds like a bad word, but yeah, they have an expectation that you're going to push certain products or you're going to push, whatever they need. So working with Investors Group, I guess, or IG Wealth Management now allows you to choose the best suited product for them, which is definitely beneficial.
Yeah, yeah. I think the minute you start putting the client before the product is when you actually start doing good work. Nothing to say the banks don't do a great job. That they do. We're lucky and fortunate to have such a strong banking system or financial system within Canada, um, compared to the US or wherever else. We're fortunate in that sense. And there's a lot of things they do great. The customer service skills I learned working for the bank were second to none. I just think the fact that my role was always geared towards performance, and they ranked performance as how many products can I put in Justin's hands.
Mhm.
Um, I just thought that was backwards. People are going to do what they're going to do in the world of information. We can see that there's a huge array of access to products. Um, so understanding who the person is and what their needs really are really allows me to do better, deeper planning that then we can bring in the products that help those clients meet those goals. And two, I think our industry, again, we're always working to better the financial literacy of our peer groups, our friends, our clients. Um, I think it puts us in a better position to be a sounding board and just help educate our clients to say what is out there. What's the difference from an advisor to a planner to working with a bank to working with an independent, and understanding those nuances. And I think you'll see the industry over the next 5 years continue down that path where transparency is key. And I think the value is really what you're gonna see put at the forefront there is understanding what you pay for and what value you get. And you see that every day with your clients.
Mhm.
They know if they trust you to sell their home or help buy a home, they know what value they're getting from you. And then, of course, they're always going to put that dollar amount and say, okay, well, is Justin giving me good value for this percentage? Um, and I think that's important as educated consumers. We all want value. We don't want to feel like we're getting ripped off.
Yeah.
Um, and when it comes to money, the unknown can lead you to make poor decisions. Behavior around money is always something that's fascinated me. And I think the further I get into this industry, the more it continues to fascinate me because everybody has a different relationship with money. So that I find is the exciting part of my job is every day I get in front of different people who have a different relationship and put a different value on a dollar. And you really got to learn how to sit and listen and figure out what is important, because what's important to you is not important to the next person, and vice versa. So again, having just that open box of solutions to put in front of clients, I think really allows me to do proper deep financial planning.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Like but it's so true though, right? Being able to be transparent and provide that financial literacy, because especially us and generations before us growing up, there was no financial literacy. Like, you didn't learn it. Apparently now they teach it in school. I heard from somebody that they have a
Yeah.
bit more information on it. We have no idea how to manage money when you're coming out of school, right? You get a job, you start making a little bit of money, and then I don't know. If you're like me, you spent it, right?
Yeah.
Until you finally get
Yeah.
your butt in gear, right?
Yeah.
And it's good to have that transparency, like, because I know your industry, though, it already is pretty strict with a lot of stuff, right, of what can be
Yeah.
done, what can be said. I know even sometimes we talk
Yeah.
about advertising and stuff, and it's difficult for you to come up with creative ways just because of the like
You're right.
handcuffs around that.
I have to laugh because we have a ton of compliance, for good course, like for good reason. And advertising and marketing has always been one of those sticking points because I find people outside of our industry market more about our industry than we do. And it's because we gotta really be careful on what we say. You see, unfortunately, articles about people that get reprimanded for absconding with money. You see different news headlines about wrongdoings and people acting
All those.
poorly with client money, and I think for good reason. We have a lot of checks and balances now that are put in place to protect the consumer again. Um, and it's one of those things where we kind of got to walk that fine line on how we promote and what we promote.
Mhm.
Um, I'm a true believer in any entrepreneurial spirit that we have one reputation. So act in good faith and good things will happen.
And that's so important, right? Like, I always say, it's never worth one deal is never worth my reputation,
Sure.
right? It makes no sense, which not everybody carries that philosophy, and I know you're the same way, where you're not gonna do something just to get
No.
a quick hit, but then because bad, like, one if you do a good job for 10 people, one person might
Yeah.
praise you publicly. You do one bad job for somebody, you screw somebody,
Yeah.
they're telling everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you view your business the same as I do. Like I'm building long-term relationships.
Yeah.
Some people will be clients for a short time. I hope all my clients will be clients for the full career of mine in this industry. But at the end of the day, I just treat it as everyone's entitled to good advice. And
Mhm.
if I don't know an answer, I'm going to tell you up front, I don't know an answer, but I'm going to go get that information for you. Um, I see a lot of people just make promises, and it's not always the right way to go. Because if you can't live up to that promise, then it's not going to work out well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, you're in this business for the long
Yeah.
haul, right? I just helped a buyer buy a house that I've been working with for 7 years,
Yeah.
right? And that's just an example of how when you're in it for the long haul, it doesn't matter about what the deal, like what it's gonna happen tomorrow,
Yeah.
but how it's gonna happen, it could happen 10 years from now, 15 years, whatever it is, but especially you, because you're growing with these people, right? You're helping them
Yeah.
get their portfolio from, here to here. So,
And it's I think that's another part of this career path that I didn't anticipate e- enjoying so much. 10 years in now, I still have a long way to go, but I've watched clients start from that first career, and now they have a house. Now they have a family. And on the other side of that coin, I've seen clients where we were starting retirement planning 10 years ago, and now they're in the thick of retirement, traveling all over the place. And I'm getting calls and saying, "Hey, Matt, we're going here. We're doing this. I'm going to see the grandkids. I'm taking them there." And it's so rewarding being able to kind of quantify that work. And I'm sure it's the same with you when
mhm.
you're working with a client for 7 years and all of a sudden now you get to hand them the keys to that house. It's just a good feel good moment, and we get to have those so often. It's you got to stop and appreciate that because we've been grinding. We we both know we've been working hard, and you get to that position and you just got to stop and just be thankful for it.
No, you have to be, right? And people don't see all the work that goes into the prior stuff, right? And you're right, getting those calls is amazing. Like, how many houses I sell, when people send me a picture of, "Oh, we did this renovation. Look at this, look at that." It's really cool to see. And then some people, I stay in touch with them. They don't stay in touch with me, but then I see their house in 4 years, 5 years when they're ready to sell again. They call me, and it's just cool to see everything they've done,
Yeah,
right?
come full circle, right?
Yeah.
And I think you probably can equate a home rather than a house with your financial well-being. People have a lot of pride, and they might not be the biggest house, might not be the fanciest, but when they get that house, and then when you see it 5, 10, 7 years later, and you sell that house and you can see what they've done and how they've made that space theirs and invested in it, whether it be time or money, it's awesome. It's
Mhm.
cool to see. I think that's like the fruits of our labor, let's say.
Yeah. I was gonna say, speaking of fruits of labor, I know you've recently become a dad.
Yeah.
How have you found that balance with work? And because you don't have like mandatory office hours, right? So you're kind of,
Yeah,
you can work from home or how are you finding that balance?
I'm not as structured as a 9 to 5 employee or anything like that, which has pros and cons. I mean, there are some late nights and some weekends, but at the end of the day, it's been a big shift. I'm naturally, it's a huge responsibility. It's been a lot of fun. I find there's a lot of changes that I don't know if I anticipated. Um, but the one thing I had a few colleagues tell me is that you'll find your results kind of magnify, and I think you just have to become more focused on
Yeah.
on your time. You don't have that. I used to fly by the seat of my pants a little bit, where you could kind of do something and not have to be so structured. That you can't do that now. Like, time is precious. I find you have your full day, you have work, and then you gotta be on. You got a child that comes home from daycare or wherever they are, and, um, you gotta give them the full attention, and so that part of it has been a change, and it's been awesome, but it's a little bit harder to get everything done. I think anybody with a kid under 2 realizes that, it life moves a little bit slower, let's say, but, you just try to stop and enjoy every moment.
Yeah, and you've been good at balancing that, eh? Like the structure, because time, you're really like when I find if you give yourself a limit when you do something, like I started structuring my day right down to 15-minute intervals
Yeah,
because it's like, okay, I'm giving myself this much time.
yeah,
You'll get it done.
yeah,
Right? It's actually amazing how quickly you can do something when you have that
yeah.
deadline, right? So it's definitely good that you're able to find that structure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm live and die by lists. Like, I have lists coming out my ears. You look at my desk, I was just
Are you a
check.
spreadsheet guy?
Yeah,
Are you a
yeah. I'm still a pen and paper. I love pen and paper. Like, I'm good with technology too, but I just put my, let's say, high IQ meetings early in the morning. Like, I know if it's not before 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the chance of it getting pushed to the next day are high. So just knowing what I need to get done and just always having um, a list or a structure or a schedule to say, look, I got to knock off all these things. I have got these meetings X, Y, and Z tomorrow. Um, you learn to kind of prioritize those things first. Um, and I think the beautiful part of being an entrepreneur or being self-employed is I get to bake family time into that pie and
Mhm.
just make sure that I do have a certain time where I get to just put the phone down, put the laptop away, and disconnect and say, now it's time to be with my daughter or be with my wife and be with my family. And I'm really relishing in that right now because it's been a lot of fun. It's been a journey. Anybody that knows uh, or has young kids, it's like she changes every week. So it's learning new things. Watching Bluey, for instance, is just it's been fun. It's been
Yeah.
fun. It's
Are you
been a
a
wild ride.
what's the other good one? I know my sister-in-law, they always watch it in their house. It's the one that has humor for adults in it too. It's the 2 dogs. It might be
Yeah,
Bluey.
it's Blue.
Was that Bluey?
Yeah, it's Bluey.
Okay.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. They actually made me watch an episode
Oh,
about
yeah.
them going to, like, I think it was Home Depot or
Yeah.
something, and they're like, "Oh, look how funny this episode is," and I'm like, You're making me watch an episode of Bluey? You're recommending it to people?" That's hilarious, but it's good that you're able to be intentional enough with your time to set aside that time to spend specifically with your family, right? Because I think a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, can get caught on that wheel where you're just constantly on, right? And, Yeah, something you gotta kinda work at, right? Because it's
You
hard.
absolutely do, and I we've had conversations about it before. I find, um, especially in our situation where we don't have huge teams to rely on getting everything done. So, disconnecting at night when I just can sit there and think about 15 things that I got to do in the morning, um, it definitely takes a conceded effort to kind of put that aside and say, hey, listen, like I'll get up early and I'll deal with it.
Mhm.
Um, so learning to turn that off, and it's still a work in progress, I'll say. Like there's times I get told to close the laptop, and that's fine. But I think that's part of the privilege of being able to kind of schedule some of that family time too. It's a balance, and I'm sure we'll be refining it until she moves away to university. So
Yeah. Well, that's good. Hopefully you are, and then, it'd be exciting time just going to university. You'll probably cry.
yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. But looking back in terms of, where you've come in your business so far, what do you think is something major that you've done or implemented in it that really helped you grow your business? Like, what's the one thing that you find like you need to
Yeah.
do, and this is the staple, like, this is how I really started things started to click. Do you remember there being a moment like that or something you started doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think early on, when you're in any business, I find it's probably transferable to any starting any type of business. I I wanted to tell everybody everything. I have a lot of information. I did my CFP, did my professional designations, a few other ones, and you have all this information. You just want to spit it out at people and say, "Listen, I know all this. Like, come work with me." And you quickly learn that doesn't work. First off, but I think the other side of that coin is you assume that a lot of people know things.
Mhm.
And I think that gets back to my point before about just shutting up and listening. You assume people know things, and not everyone does. And so I think really I had an opportunity early in my career to sit down and talk to a company about a pension plan. And literally, I thought I was going in just to kind of give them a nuts and bolts and say, this is how it works. This is what you should be cognizant of. This is a couple of the pitfalls, some things you want to, couple actionable items, things like that. And then um, I did that, and it was across 2 days, and I talked to, or at least I spoke in front of close to 300 different people. And it really opened my eyes to how different people's needs are. And it got me in front of a lot of people that I was then able to kind of sit down with one to one and say, okay, well, like what's bugging you? What do you have? What have you done? What are you losing sleep over at night? And um, really learning to kind of just slow down, listen, find out what's driving these people, what they're concerned about, um, and kind of not have any assumptions going in. I think that's a big thing too. You think people are in certain industries that would know lots about different things. Like I'll just, for instance, pick on a lawyer. You think lawyers have great acumen about finances just because they're smart people generally. Not always the case. And I think it's one of those things where you just you probably see it in your industry too, where you just got to learn to just be an active listener. Um, and then from that, again, you can provide better value because everything you start to talk about and share with those clients or those people is just a lot more valuable.
Yeah, and you're right about you don't know the expectations and you assume that people are always gonna know certain things because you deal it in every day, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're always talking about it.
Yeah.
Like, I know I always compare it to real estate where it's like, because I'm in it so much, I'm always, like, looking at stuff, and whereas the average person, like, they don't really care about it until they actually have to sell their house,
Yeah.
and then it's funny how much they forget from when they bought it. They're like, "Oh, how do showings work?" And I'm like, "We went and looked at 40 houses, like, 5 years ago, right?" But you don't remember. So I think it's just in anything, right? People just over time
Yep.
if they're not dealing with it. So yeah, so you find that by simplifying stuff or just not having expectations really helped improve your results there.
Absolutely. I think our industry can be complex, and when you try to overcomplicate it, um, you kind of lose sight of what you're trying to achieve, and then you kind of muddy the water. So I think that opportunity really helped me understand that, um, just just kind of slow down, take a step back, and not make any assumptions about who's sitting in front of you. And sometimes you'll just jump right into the thick of things, and other times you'll just be more of a learning curve and just say, hey, this is what we got to focus on right now. And it's going to change over time, and part of that is, again, working with clients long term. It's going to evolve, but I think that opportunity really kind of just gave me that perception that you do know a lot, but you don't have to tell everybody everything all at once, because it's not going to be valuable. It's just
Mhm.
not going to stick to the wall, let's say.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, so that was definitely a learning moment for me in my industry, for sure.
That's awesome. And then I guess I always love this question. I always hear other people ask it on
Yeah.
podcasts, so I'm gonna start asking it on podcasts. If you had to go back and tell yourself something at the start
Uh,
of this whole thing,
yeah,
what would it be?
just keep grinding.
Just keep going?
Yeah. Um, as anybody that's built any type of business with any type of success, there's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days. And I think my persistence of just sticking with it and just putting your nose down to the grindstone, and just working and having faith that, you know what, you keep planting seeds, it's going to come back to you at some point in time. Like you said, with the client 7 years later, like, I've been fortunate enough where I talked to prospects 10 years ago, and then all of a sudden 10 years later, they're excellent clients. But at that time, it was a hard no. Um, but I think, again, you just keep working at it. There was a lot of times I wanted to just stop and go
Think I'm
back,
just gonna go get a job.
yeah,
Not gonna
go back to the bank and say, hey, give me that salary again. Which just seemed easy at the time, but knowing where I am today versus what you had to go through to get there, definitely just stick with it. Just keep going.
That's such a key thing, right? Like it's I think everybody probably has that moment in their career path, not their career path, but when they've started something, a business, of the, okay, I can just go, like, when I'm done, I'm just gonna go back to this job.
Yeah.
But I see that kind of as a motivation of like, okay, if you want to try something, just go do it
Yeah.
because you can always go back to what you were doing before. So literally, why not just take that risk,
Yep.
try it, and if it doesn't work out, then you go back. You don't know till you try because you're gonna regret 20 years from now. You're gonna regret what you didn't do more than what you actually did.
Absolutely. And I think that's the mentality and the approach I took, was that there's always going to be a bank I can go back and work at. But I had a motivation to do things differently than how I was doing it before. And it was just that persistence. And I mean, it's easy to say now looking back on it, to be honest. But yeah, I think if you believe in something, just keep doing it, keep working at it, because eventually it's gonna click, and you're gonna have that aha moment. And um, nothing's easy. So anything worth it, you're gonna have to put and invest time into it, and hopefully it'll come full circle for you.
Yeah, you're right about that, and hopefully it does, but I think keep your head down and it will eventually come, but that's all good advice. This has been a good interview. This
Yeah,
is fun. I feel like I shouldn't put a limit on these episodes. In fact, we should just go for the full hour, but, we'll wrap it up now, but I appreciate you coming on today. It was nice having you come down here and,
yeah,
sit in, and we get to do yet another video thing together. I feel like we've been, what, Cable 14?
yeah. We're
We've
checking
done
them
some
out.
stuff in the past, topical stuff, so
Yeah.
it's nice to actually talk about you for once and not just, what's going on in the financial industry.
Well, I appreciate you having me on here. It's a good change of pace. I like the different vibe here.
Yeah, it's nice. Darker, right?
Yeah.
Little better feeling. Unless if you're listening, it's dark. It's
Yeah.
it's a bit moodier. Watch us on YouTube. And subscribe. I don't know how to do this. So yeah, anyways, everybody, thank you for tuning in again this week. I look forward to it. If you want to connect with Matt, his information will be in the description below of both the podcast and the YouTube channel. So feel free to reach out. And I'll talk to you all again next week.